6 machines running.
It's in that course that
That's not going to be here Friday. But we're going to try to bring it up.
pulling up his last name. The guy Westinghouse did on his hearing contract that ended just as we started ours.
Okay, let's begin. Let me have your attention. Let's begin. It's my privilege to welcome you to the University of Tennessee Nuclear Engineering Department Colloquium Program. Today's speaker is Dr. Terry Douglas, who's the chairman and CEO of CTI Molecular Imaging Incorporated. Terry received his PhD from the University of Tennessee in electrical engineering in 1968. Then he worked for EG&G Ortec for 15 years until 1983 when he founded CTI. CTI has been in existence for 19 years. That's the subject of his presentation today, which is entitled The Future of PET and CTI. But before I give him the floor, I should tell you that Terry and I grew up together. We're from the same hometown. He's the successful guy. And we used to play Little League Baseball together. He was a catcher, at least I thought he was a catcher, until he just told me about 10 minutes ago that his real talents were on second base in the outfield, right?
That's right.
And but what I remember, and believe me, I should know because I was a pitcher, that he was a catcher. And so, without any further delay, Terry, welcome.
Thank you, Lee. Actually, Lee's right. He was a big catcher, and he was a big pitcher, and I was a little catcher. That's true. And that was 47 years ago. He didn't tell him how long ago that was. And I will tell you that mainly because of Lee, that year, 1955, we won the Little League State Championship in Tennessee and got beat by Florida in Rome, Georgia. We went on to win the Little League World Series, I guess you remember. Anyway, trivia. Also, 42 years ago, I would be sitting right now, 42 years ago, sitting over in Estabrook Hall, taking freshman engineering drawing. I don't think you guys have to do that anymore, do you? Thank your lucky stars that you don't have to do that. That was a pain, along with chemistry lab and ROTC and PE and engineering lab. All of those things were crammed in to your first quarter freshman year. So it's good to be back under these circumstances rather than the other. I also did teach a little bit at UT when I got out at night, sort of part-time biomedical engineering, and this is really what I like to do, is hopefully teach a few things. This is probably going to be a little different seminar than what you've seen, because I'm going to talk a little bit about technology, but I'm also going to talk probably a lot more about business, and it's because that's what I know more about now. Technology I don't know much about. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about PET and what it is and how it works, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about our company. In fact, this particular presentation is pretty close to the one that I have been doing. When you go public, which we did June the 20th, you do a 3-week road show where you see as many potential investors as you could. We saw 150 potential investors in 3 weeks. Went to 24 cities in 3 weeks. Ate in that 3-week period. Ate 1 meal in a restaurant. The rest were either in a plane or in my hotel room. So it's a pretty difficult thing. But I've done this presentation a few times, so I ought to know it. And lately, I've been doing it over again as we try to further communicate how our company's doing. This is pretty fancy. So let me try this particular thing. There's really two main points that I want to talk about. The first is what is PET and who is CTI. And PET is a relatively new, from the point of view of clinical application, expanding medical diagnostic imaging modality that has application in urology, oncology, and cardiology, all three. And CTI is the industry leader. We've been the innovator in this business. We're the only company that is a pure play in this business, and we're the only company that has a total solution. And I'll explain what that means when we get there. We're also interesting in that we, from a business point of view, in that we have a capital equipment kind of business where we sell large capital equipment, and we also have a recurring revenue business where we sell radiopharmaceuticals on a unit dose basis. We have both a razor and a razor blade kind of business, which is different. And we have some significant technological advantages that I will show you, and also we've had some good financial performance lately. First, let me talk about what is PET. Even before a person feels their symptom, and certainly before an x-ray shows anything, or before a CT could reveal a mass in that particular patient for whatever it might be, there is a cancer cell with a distinct molecular signature. That's what happens. That's the first thing that happens. And so what makes PET different is the ability to look at disease at the molecular level. Most diagnostic modalities look at disease from an anatomical or physical change point of view. PET looks at disease from a molecular point of view. And how does it do that? It does it kind of interesting. I did a PhD dissertation in positron emitters and how to measure them and all that. It turned out to be pretty fortunate because a positron emitter is the way PET works. PET stands for positron emission tomography. And what you do is you tag a compound, most of the time it's sugar or glucose, with a fluorine-18 isotope, which happens to be a positron emitter. You inject that compound, that tagged tracer, into a patient. It accumulates within the body based on the utilization of glucose, and our brain uses glucose, our heart uses glucose, and fortunately or unfortunately, as the case may be, cancer uses glucose at a 4 to 7 times higher rate than normal tissue. So that glucose that settles within the body depending on what the glucose utilization rate is. It turns out that in this case, physics works for you, and that when a positron, which annihilates with an electron, it produces 2 gamma rays, 2 relatively high energy gamma rays, 511 keV gamma rays that go off in 180 degree opposite direction. And because of that, and because of the fact that you have a patient surrounded with detector elements, you can detect the fact that there has been a coincidence between an event that occurred over here from a 511 keV and another event that occurred on this side. So if you detect these coincidences and you accumulate all these lines of activity, eventually you can do back projection or iterative reconstruction or some form of reconstruction and produce an image of what's going on inside that patient. Originally, we just looked at a single slice. We looked at a single tomographic slice, and we summed those up by moving the patient through the couch, through the gantry. Now we use 3-dimensional data accumulation and also 3-dimensional reconstruction. So basically, the way PET works is essentially you have a glucose molecule that's tagged with a fluorine-18 compound. It doesn't have to be fluorine-18. It can be C11, O15, N13. It can be other compounds that are positron emitters. But fluorine-18, because it has a longer half-life than most of than the others do, is usually the compound that's used. So that's basically how PET works, and it really has 2 fundamental advantages: the fact that you can use the positron annihilation and 511 keV gamma rays coming off in opposite directions as a way to locate the event and where it occurred. The second big advantage is that you can tag biological compounds with carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and fluorine, all of which are significant with regard to your ability to tag them. Here's sort of the process that occurs. A cyclotron is used, and anybody recognize this guy right here? He happens to be sitting on the second row. But a cyclotron produces the radioisotope, produces the fluorine-18 or the carbon and oxygen, nitrogen. There's also an automated chemistry system that's part of this, where the fluorine-18 is attached to a glucose molecule in this case, As I mentioned, there's a short half-life. There's only a 2-hour half-life for this particular compound, so it's necessary to locate the cyclotron near where the patient is scanned. So we have 32 cyclotrons, more or less, located throughout the U.S., where we produce the fluorine-18, we produce the radiopharmaceutical, we do the compounding or the radiopharmacy on that compound, and we deliver on a twice-day basis, in a unit dose basis, this FPG, as we call it, to the patient. The patient's then injected with the isotope. They're put through the scanner, which we manufacture, and then you can see what a whole body scan would look like with this patient. You can see normal brain function. You can see normal heart function here. But you can see abnormal uptake here, which indicates there's cancer. This patient also has metastasis into the bones, which you can see because of the high uptake in this area. So this is what a whole body scan would look like with PET. You're looking at glucose metabolism instead of anatomy. You're looking at biochemistry, function, instead of physical characteristics. So the whole process, just to give you a quick overview of that, is a patient inquires, they're concerned about a condition that they have, they see their physician examines them, they decide that they're going to have a PET scan, so they make a contact with a PET provider center. That provider then schedules the patient, orders the radiopharmaceutical from our PETnet distribution. We deliver it to the PET provider site. The patient is scanned. The report is made, and that report goes back to the physician. And also, if there's therapy involved, that is radiation therapy or chemotherapy or surgery, that report goes to the therapy provider. And of course, there's the insurer over here, which is the key to all this, as you'll see later, is waiting to get the information so that the study can be paid for. So what is different about PET? This is a patient that where there's a slice out of the thorax of the patient. The dark areas are the lung cavities. Within the lung cavities, you can see that there's a mass, this gray area here. The question is this lesion cancerous or not cancerous? The normal procedure that you would use would be to take a needle, go into the center of this tumor, pull out tissue, take it, stain it, put it in a microscope, and determine whether or not this was cancerous tissue or not. If you did that in this case, you'd get the wrong answer, and let me show you why you would get the wrong answer. This is the PET image of the same patient in the same slice. As you can see, the center of this tumor is benign, but the outer rim of this tumor, which is the bright spot, is very malignant. In fact, there's another thing you find out from PET that you didn't see otherwise, is that there's another spot over here, and that the disease has metastasized. That is, it has spread. If you did a whole body scan of this patient, you would see the places where the cancer is actually spread. So where CT, that is the normal procedure, normal diagnostic procedure, which is an X-ray procedure, localizes where the lesion occurs, PET actually identifies that it's cancer. And the important thing of that is obviously in this case it changed the patient treatment. Here you would do nothing based on what you determined. Here you would do surgery to take this out, and you'd also do chemotherapy to take care of the metastasis. PET-CT does add advantages, so we created a new machine that we call a PET-CT. I'll show you the advantage of that. This is a CT image of a patient who has colorectal cancer that has recurred, and has spread. You can see from the CT image, you can't really see where it has spread. If you look at the PET image, where the dark spots are the areas where cancer exists, you can see that it has spread, but you can't see quite as well where it is. But if you put these two together, and I hope you can see this, if you put these two together, you see not only the good anatomical detail that you get from CT, but you also see where the cancer is within the liver and where it is within the lymph nodes. We did this invention about 2 years ago, and we won Time Magazine's Invention of the Year in 2000 for this particular product. We think that this product will probably represent 50% of our business in the scanner area in in the near future. The thing that really has held PET back has been the lack of Medicare reimbursement. I'm going to give you some real life problems now. But recently we were able to get Medicare reimbursement for a broad number of indications. And the reason we did that is we provided them some data. Let me back up. Oops. Here we go. We provided them some data to show the advantage or how more accurate PET was than conventional imaging. And you can see in basically all of these cancer types that the diagnostic accuracy for PET is significantly greater than the conventional imaging techniques. And probably more importantly than that is the fact that in 30% of the cases, about 30% of the cases where PET has been used, it's changed the therapy management of the patient. That has either been upstaged or downstage, depending on what we found out from PET. So as a result of this, Medicare has begun to reimburse for PET. You can see the indications as they have been approved. Last year, we received broad coverage for these 6 major cancers: lung, esophageal, colorectal, lymphoma, etc. This year, we received broad coverage for breast cancer, which became effective yesterday, and also received coverage for primary diagnosis for myocardial valvulosis prior to revascularization. What all those words mean is that prior to you having angioplasty or bypass or stents, Medicare will reimburse for you to have a PET scan to make sure your heart's still alive, so that if they fix the plumbing, the heart actually improves its output. We have pending reimbursement for Alzheimer's and for other cancers as well. So you see that PET has application in neurology, cardiology, and oncology. So it's a broad application tool. Sort of what is the potential for PET? If you look at the number of procedures that should be done based on what is and should be reimbursed, we should be doing about 14 million procedures per year in the U.S. Currently, we're doing about 400,000, or we will do about 400,000 procedures this year. This green bar here, but you can see that there's a large potential for growth for PET. You'll see that we've grown quite a bit, but there's also a pretty significant potential growth for growth, further growth. Won't cover this. This is really what the model is. If you're interested in getting in PET and being a provider, shows you how good a business that this could be. Give you a little bit about the market growth and what is projected for market growth. Currently, the market for all of the PET products and services is about $700 million. This includes the cyclotrons that are sold, the radiopharmaceuticals that are delivered, and also the scanners that are used to scan the patient, also the other services that are provided. In 2006, we're estimating the market to be more like $3 billion, and you can see that the razor sales do grow significantly, but the razor blade sales grow even greater. That is, the recurring revenue part of the business is growing faster than the scanner part of the business. Currently, or at the beginning of this year, there was about 450 units installed in the U.S. We're projecting that there'll be over 2,000 units installed in 2006. This sounds like a lot, but there's 100 million diagnostic imaging procedures done this year. We're going to be doing about 400,000. So PET has still a very small part of a very big market and has a lot of potential to grow. So that's sort of what PET is from a clinical point of view, and also from a market point of view. Let me talk about who we are, who CTI is. We're, as I mentioned, the only total solutions provider in PET. We produce the cyclotrons that are used to produce the radiopharmaceuticals that are then injected into the patient and go through our scanners. We also have some detector technology that I'll talk about. These are scintillators that are used to detect the 511 keV gamma rays that come off of the patient. And we also provide a number of services to aid the providers of this technology. I think I covered all of that. Just these are the market segments, business segments that we look at, that we report from a financial point of view. Our scanner technology, the detector technology, PETNet that distributes the radiopharmaceuticals, and their other services and sales. We do have competition. In the scanner part of the business, GE and Philips are the major competition for us. We are the leaders. In the PetNet part of the business, that is the business that produces the radiopharmaceuticals and delivers it, we have a couple of competitors, IBA and Syncor. But we are the only ones that have the total package, and that helps a lot in terms of our competitive situation. We have been the industry innovator. I guess it's because we've been around longer than anybody else. That's probably the reason. As a company and as employees, we produced the first commercial PET scanner that was ever produced and have continued to develop that technology over time. We also produced the first negative ion self-shielded cyclotron that allowed us to produce these radiopharmaceuticals on a regional basis and in an economical way, and we are the leaders in that business as well. We invented the concept of putting these cyclotrons in regional sites and producing radiopharmaceuticals in the regional sites. We've created some new detector technology that allows scanners to have the kind of performance that they have today. So we've been involved in most of the innovations that occurred. I guess that's the way it ought to be. Four of the five founders were engineering graduates from the University of Tennessee, and we kind of like technology. So it's something that we've sort of grown with and enjoyed doing over the history of our career and with CTI. Just to give you an overview of our product line, we have a scanner for every price point. These scanners range in price from about $800,000 for the lowest cost device to about $2.3 million for the combination PET and CT device. To give you some idea, the average sale is normally with these two devices and is around $1.3 million. A CT device is around $500,000, an MR device is around $800,000 to $1.3 million as well. So we're at the top end of the cost curve for the scanner technology. We distribute our products kind of interesting with a multiple distributor strategy. CTI sells its products to the total solutions market, that is to those customers that want not just a scanner delivered, but they want a whole package, including the radiopharmaceutical delivery. We use Siemens to sell our products in the hospital radiology market, and we also use Hitachi, who happens to have a strong capability in outpatient diagnostic centers, to sell our scanner products there. We're talking only about our scanner distribution strategy here. There's a new detector technology I'd like to tell you about a little bit. It's called LSO. Some of you may be familiar with Bismuth Germanate, or BGO, which is the scintillator of choice. That has been the scintillator of choice for PET scanners for many years. We've been working on a new material called LSO. It's a lutetium oxyorthosilicate. This is a material that we licensed in 1995, and since that time we have been developing it so that it could be commercially used. There are two major advantages with this new technology. First, it will allow us to reduce the scan time. Currently, it takes about 30 to 45 minutes to do a patient scan with a BGO type scanner. With the new LSO material, we'll be able to reduce that scan time to 5 minutes once we integrate it with our new platform. That has significant advantages, and for two reasons. One, creates a better economic situation for our providers in that they can get more patients through. Second advantage is that it allows us to produce devices that have a lower cost, just by the nature of the fact that this LSO material produces more light in a shorter period of time, allows us to produce the electronics and the processing computer applications in a way that allows us to produce lower cost devices. It also has an advantage to the patient. These are sick patients. It's very difficult for them to lie still on a patient couch for 30 to 45 minutes, which they need to do. 5 minutes is much more manageable. As I mentioned, we are the exclusive provider of this material. There is no competing technology. In fact, over half of our products this year, half of our scanner products have this technology in it. And we start with the basic lutetium raw material. We refine it We have a plant out near the airport where we have furnaces and pullers where this material is actually grown as a crystal. And you can see what a crystal blue might look like. We slice that material up and then we dice it so that you have individual crystal elements. So we are very vertically integrated from the point of view of our detector technology. It's a fundamental technology and gives us some real competitive advantages. Second competitive advantage, of course, that I mentioned is this large network of PETnet radiopharmaceutical delivery sites. We have 32 of these sites that have our cyclotrons located in them. We have about a 62% market share for radiopharmaceuticals. This is a very difficult to replicate network. First, significant investment. You're talking about $1.5 to $2 million investment because you've got a cyclotron located here. We have an advantage because we get these at cost. It's also a highly regulated industry. You're operating these cyclotrons and the production of these radiopharmaceuticals under FDA good manufacturing practices, under state boards of license for pharmacies, under NRC type regulations for handling of radioactive materials, environmental limitations. So it's a highly regulated industry. So it's very difficult for anybody to get into this business, and that gives us a real competitive advantage. As I mentioned, fluorine is a great isotope to be used for tags, and these are some of the other compounds in which we have tagged fluorine-2, fluorodopa. This is a new radiopharmaceutical called FDDMP, which will allow us to look at the plaques and tangles in Alzheimer's disease. These are a couple of new cancer agents. So there's right now 99% of all the studies are done with what's called FDG or glucose labeled with fluorine 18. But in the future, we'll see much more specific agents that will be used for PET. This is sort of what a life cycle revenue looks like for the sale of a scanner. It's great to get a $1.5 million order for a scanner, but if you look at the rest of this business, I'm going to talk about the business part of CTI now. You get a $700,000 service contract, but the real economic driver for PET is the fact that over the lifetime of one of these scanners, we'll sell anywhere from $3 to $4 million of radiopharmaceuticals. So this is the proverbial razor and razor blade business, and you can see why you want to be in razor blade parts of the business. This is kind of how we see the market and our not the market, but how we see our sales shifting. In 1996, we were about $43 million in sales, and 75% of our business was selling scanners. This past year, we're about $233 million, and about 57% of our sales were scanners. But in 2006, we'll be about $1 billion business, and about 40% of our business will be scanners. So you can see the rest of the part of the business, the recurring revenue part of the business, is growing tremendously fast. Let me talk a little bit about our organization real quick. There are basically 4 business segments. One of them, the largest business segment, is what we call CPS, CTI PET Systems. Here we do all of our scanner R&D and production and product support. Siemens is a partner with us in this business. They own 49.9% of this business. We own 50.1%. The other business segments are the detector material business, both BGO and LSO detector material. We produce both, and we're the largest producer of these detectors in the world. PETnet, as I mentioned, is 100% owned by CTI, and also what we call CTI Services and Sales, which is an organization that does all the sales of our products, all the service, provides all the other ancillary support for getting into this business. Some of our key managers, myself, Ron Nutt, who's also a graduate of the University of Tennessee College of Engineering, and Mike Phelps. 3 of us were co-founders of CTI, along with two other guys that have retired from the business, Mike Crabtree and Kelly Milam, who are also UT College of Engineering graduates. The five of us founded CTI. The three of us on this list are still active in the business. We have David Gill, who's our Chief Financial Officer, and has led us through a public offering, fairly successful public offering, as you can see. Tom Hook joined us recently to lead our CTI services and sales organization. He comes to us from General Electric. Mark Rose, who you can't see his name here, it runs our PET and pharmaceutical business, and he comes to us from the pharmaceutical part of the business. So you can see that we have a broad capability as far as management of the company is concerned. A little bit of a track record, what has occurred and what's driving this business. We kind of drifted along for the early 90s with our sales being in around the $30 million range until we began to get some of these approvals that we needed, like FDA approval and Medicare approval. And you can see since that time, our business has grown over 40% per year in terms of the top line. Our profitability has grown over 70% per year over that period of time as well. We kind of expect that trend to continue because, as you saw, we're only on the tip of the iceberg as it relates to the what PET could do. I'll just kind of skip over. These are some other financial growth numbers that see are pretty good. As I mentioned, in June the 21st, we went public. I kind of pulled this yesterday off of the internet, which shows since this is the closing price, which turned out to be $19.50 a share. We were really way down 15% down here when we started. So the IPO price was at $17 per share on June the 21st. Yesterday, I think it closed about $25.85 or something like that. I think today's over 26. So we've grown about over 50% per year, and 50% in terms of our stock price since June the 21st. And as you can see, the NASDAQ and S&P and other things have dropped to 20% over that period of time. We've grown 50%. The rest of the market's dropped 20%. So we're pretty popular stock right now. I can't advise you whether to buy or sell. That's against the SEC regulation. Those are just factual data. Okay, but you can see in engineering graduate things begin to change over time after you stay around a while in terms of what you do. Basically, what I wanted to tell you, and I hope I showed you two things. One, that PET is a very important and significant medical diagnostic imaging modality. It'll make a difference in diagnosis and therapy management for oncology, cardiology, and neurology. And it has grown tremendously in the last few years, but it has a tremendous growth opportunity for the future. Second thing I wanted to show you was that CTI is the industry leader in this business. We've been the innovator, the only pure play, the only total solutions provider in the business. We have a very interesting business model with a capital equipment component and a recurring revenue component, and we have some sustainable technological and competitive advantages. I'm going to turn it over for questions if you'd like.
Sure. Questions and comments on Gary's presentation?
What is the cost for a patient or a hospital when they have one of these things done, and what do you think it'll happen to that in the next few years as you get more volume?
Yeah, the price is about $2,000 per study for a whole body scan currently. That compares to about $500 for a CT scan and about $800 or $900 for an MR scan, whole body scan. Traditionally, those prices have come down, and they will. Currently, the average usage on a scanner is about 3 studies per day, and as more and more studies get done on these scanners, you amortize the cost over more and more patients. So the cost for doing a study comes down, and of course the price for a study will come down. I think it'll do like CT and MR have done eventually. Probably the next 5 years it'll be under $1,000 for a study. The other part of that equation, though, is that, for example, in cardiovascular disease, when you've been diagnosed that you have artery blockage and you need a stent, or you need bypass, or you need angioplasty, those procedures are $10,000 to $50,000 procedures. And about 35% of the cases, they, as I mentioned, they fix the plumbing. That is, they increase the blood flow to the heart, but they don't change the cardiac output. And the reason they don't is because the heart muscle, where the blood flow was blocked to, is already dead. So by increasing the blood flow, you haven't increased the cardiac output. So you insert a $2,000 procedure in there, where in 30% of the time you avoid a $10,000 to $50,000 procedure. So you can see, even though PET's very expensive, it also saves, and net saving to medical costs. Same thing is true in cancer as well. Most of the treatment is by trial and error. If you can really identify whether the chemotherapy, the radiation therapy is having effect on the malignancy, then you can better focus what your therapy is going to be. So most of our reimbursement has been obtained not only just on good clinical results that we've obtained, but because we've also demonstrated that we can reduce costs for healthcare as well.
Yeah, the particular reason I was asking is I think I remember reading somewhere that annual PET scans or every other year PET scans or something are starting to be part of deployment packages because they're so effective at catching things early. And I just wondered whether the cost is ever going to come down, where that will really be something.
I wish that would catch on.
Other questions? Mark?
I noticed you didn't mention sodium-22. Is that because of its half-life? Why is that not used?
It's not a very good tag for biological compounds, for one thing. So, but it. I don't. Bill, do you know? I don't know if this sodium-22 has ever been tagged to anything. I know when I did all my PhD work, that's about what I used was sodium-22. But I think it's because it's toxic. It's not a good choice for biological tag.
Maybe it's non-specific because sodium is everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have it everywhere, it's not going to help you.
Yeah. Could be.
I noticed that you had a pending approval for Alzheimer's testing. Does that tag the same way that it does for cancer, or how does that work? It doesn't seem to be related.
Yeah, for brain and heart, the effect is just the opposite. You're looking at you're trying to look at normal glucose utilization in the brain. Alzheimer's creates an abnormal glucose utilization, a lower glucose utilization in the frontal cortex is what the signature is for Alzheimer's. So, and the same thing is true with heart disease. If the muscle's dead, that particular part of the heart muscle is not using glucose. So, it's reduced utilization for Alzheimer's and cardiac disease. It's increased utilization for cancer.
Other questions?
I had a figure of merit earlier. I think it was called the diagnostic accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
How do doctors determine that?
That's in fact, if you look at the Journal of Nuclear Medicine where that came from, that is a summary of a summary of a summary. That, I mean, when a paper is published on any kind of diagnostic techniques, they look at false positive, false negatives, negative predictive value, positive predictive value. But that's sort of a summary of what the basic diagnostic accuracy is of those techniques. But there's very specific ways that you look at how accurate a particular technique is.
You mentioned Ted.
Have you all had any problems with the marketing of PET scanners since you're using radioisotopes that you actually inject into people? Have you had any backlash, or how have you all handled that public reaction?
This is a venous injection of a very low level of tagged glucose. So chemically, there's obviously no problem, and with a short half-life of fluorine-18, and the fact that there's also, as you can see the bladder showing up, is there's very quick both biological decay and also radioactive decay. So the dose of the patient is well quantified and well known, and that's part of the management of the patient. But we have not really had a lot of issues or questions about this. Nuclear medicine is a common procedure that's done, and so the radioactive part of the risk is very well quantified and minimal. So that's how we avoid that kind of problem.
Yes?
How did you all develop the X-ray tomography capability that you had? Did you get that from Siemens?
Yes, we just buy in a detector gantry from Siemens. It has the X-ray tube and the detectors on it, and couple it with our PET device.
Let me make a comment for the young graduate students in the audience. If you recall in Terry's presentation how many times he referred to his PhD dissertation. So this work, the company, CTI, really grew out of his PhD dissertation. And so if you're really fortunate and have a good idea, he's a good example of what going for a PhD can do for you. You can become, needless to say, a wealthy person maybe.
Well, I didn't have any idea about PET at the time we were doing. Positrons just seemed like a cool thing to measure.
Turned out to be rather cool, yeah.
And of course, there's Bill Gates, right?
Yeah. Bill Gates quit, right?
That's right.
But he quit as an undergraduate.
That's right.
The actual software to and the mathematical techniques or whatever for reconstructing the stuff, is that off the shelf? Is there anything innovative about that? Do y'all do that?
Well, the actual mathematical algorithms, were developed a long time ago. The actual implementation of that there is quite a bit of development associated with that. We've gone from different reconstruction techniques, from back projections to now iterative reconstructions to modified iterative reconstruction. So there is a lot of development to get these reconstructions done in a timely way and to take account of all the corrections. In PET, you see, you have a lot of corrections that you don't in CT. You have to correct for the attenuation profile of the patient, and so it's pretty complicated, very complicated mathematical reconstruction algorithms that are used.
Does CTI do that?
Yeah, we do that.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments for Terry? I see several new faces in the audience, and those new faces probably do not know that after this presentation we adjourn downstairs for refreshments, and everybody's invited, so please join us. But before we do that, let's express our appreciation to Terry.
Is Dr. Peavy asked that they're working on Scott's
Projection. I think it's amazing when we first got it.